You guys are about to head out on tour in the US, and I wanted to know, what are you most excited about in that tour?
I think we're really excited to be playing a lot of the new stuff from our latest record. I think in total it's about 5 to 6 brand new songs that are
Okay.
gonna be put into the set, which I don't know, it could be asking a lot from our audience, but the album comes out right at the beginning of the tour. So as we sort of go through the dates, people will be listening to the music. So it'll be interesting to sort of see and hear like what really connects with our audience. And yeah, we got some really, really great shows coming up. We obviously did a lot of the East Coast earlier this year, including like New York and all those other great places. So it's going to be great to sort of be out here on the West Coast. We're actually ending the tour in Los Angeles, which is going to be a really, really fantastic night. And honestly, just sort of getting back out there in front of our fans is always a pleasure. So we're all looking forward to it.
Yeah, great. And is there a song of the new album that you look forward to playing the most?
So we're already playing Too Good at Raising Hell, which came out prior to the record.
Mhm.
Pretty Vicious. We've been playing now for about 6 months live or so. And Rockstar, which was sort of like the latest soft release before the record came out. Um, we played for the first time the other day, which was pretty cool. But there's a song called "I Won't Run," which has a, a kind of could have been me element to it, which is really sort of vocally led with a lot of like great harmony, and it's um it's a real kind of epic sounding song. But it's very different from Could Have Been Me, which is great. But it just has like that kind of sentiment, and I'm curious to sort of like hear how the audience connects to that. So
Yeah.
that one I'm particularly looking forward to.
All right, cool. And now with the US tour ahead of us, I just need to ask, is there any plan about coming over to Europe maybe next year?
Yeah, I mean, we did a Europe tour this year, coming into the UK and then Italy and France and a few other kind of places. But we'd like to. It just really depends on sort of like the time. If we can sort of like make it work, that's really down to my agent, really. But we've got festival season, obviously, next summer and stuff like this. So who knows? We're in the process right now of sort of really thinking like what we're doing next year. We've already got like some dates potentially for like Australia, and we've
Mhm.
got some more US dates like earlier in the year. But yeah, hopefully it would be great to sort of get back out to Europe if it sort of like makes sense, you know?
And one of the reasons that you're going on tour, we talked about it briefly, is the upcoming album, Pretty Vicious. Um, what do our listeners need to know about this album? Maybe give us three facts, most important facts about Pretty Vicious.
Gosh, well, firstly, I really think it's the record that a lot of our fans and critics have been waiting for us to make. It has all of the songwriting qualities of like an album like our debut, but then it also has like a really raw live energy that I just don't think we've been able to capture necessarily as well as this record. So it's definitely like a progression. I would also say that lyrically, it's probably the most honest album, and it's probably the record where I've told my own stories and experiences probably more than ever, if that makes any sense, compared to the previous albums. So, yeah, I would say those are kind of like the three main contributing factors.
Right. Now you say that it's an album that your fans and peers have been waiting for you to make. What defines this? What have they been waiting for, in your opinion?
Well, in all honesty, it's just been sort of like an experience thing. So, for instance, with like the very first album, we really, really concentrated on the songwriting and the arrangements. But when it came to the recording process, it was very touch and go. We didn't have a whole lot of time, nor did we have like a huge amount of money. So I think the production at times has kind of suffered. And one of the things that we always hear from the fans, especially throughout the years, is like your live show is so uh, it's so great, and it really kind of hits you way differently than the studio versions of like a lot of your songs. So with this album, we for the very first time we were able to give ourselves the time to live with a lot of demos, which before we would have just built on the demos. But we took the demos to one side, remembered the songs and remembered the best parts of the songs, and got into a room and kind of reworked them
Mhm.
and gave them like a new injection of energy that you can only bring when a band is like plugged in one room with maybe a couple of different players to add to the sound. So I think that's why it's such a unique album. You can really sort of feel the energy of a group playing at their best in all of the experience that we've gained throughout the years.
So you did, in fact, do a live recording. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, a lot of it was live tapes,
Yeah.
which were, sort of like comped in places and then overdubbed, and I did most of the vocals right at the end.
Mhm.
So before I even sang anything, the music was sounding like pretty great, so which is the opposite of the process that we've done before, where
Yeah.
sometimes I've sang the vocal almost the day that it was written, and it's just kind of stayed there. And I've been like, no, I like that immediate vibe, and that works for some songs, but for this track, this song, and these songs and this album, I was able to live with the demos and sort of go, actually, like I think this could be better, and I could say this and change that lyric, and there was just a lot more time and attention to detail on this album.
All right, that's super interesting. Very cool. On the last record, you had a couple guests on it. This time it's full on the Struts. Was that collaboration thing? Was that a pandemic thing, or can you imagine to have collaborations again on the future in the future?
Yeah, I mean, we had done a collaboration with Kesha on the second record. We'd done like a song with Paris Jackson after the third record. And when it came to the third record, firstly, that wasn't even meant to be a an album. It just sort of happened in about 10 days.
Okay.
And because it was the pandemic, we we knew that nobody was doing anything, and we just thought it'd be a really good way to capture the time by getting all of our friends that we've met over the years to kind of collaborate and make it kind of like a unique album. But when it came to this record, we made a real conscious decision that we've done a lot of collaborations. There's no real reason to do any more for for the foreseeable future anyway. So let's just sort of like give our fans a record that is just back to front, completely the band and nothing else. So I think it was, we needed to do that. It was about time.
Yeah. All right. Cool. And since the album is, like you said, it's very close to a live performance. Do you actually prefer being in the studio and working on music, or do you prefer being on stage?
It really depends. It depends. If the tour is good, then I genuinely really love being out and performing and getting in front of like large audiences. But then there is something about the studio which I do also really love, because with the studio comes like a much more relaxed lifestyle. It's kind of more, dare say, normal. And I get to sort of like live at my place, and I don't have to travel, and I have somewhat of like a good routine, which is really nice. But if the tour is great and every show is just brilliant, then I also love being on tour. So it's I go through phases. Sometimes
Yeah.
I hate being on tour and I'm just sort of like getting through it. But then there are times where I just love being in the studio. I think for the most part, to answer your question, I love the creative process probably more so than the touring, because it's equally rewarding, but yet you have like normality, you know?
Yeah. All right. And it's a tricky one. I get that. So it's hard to choose between these two. So lastly, is there anything that you would like to tell your fans and our listeners?
Well, I can tell you that the Struts are going to be working on more material pretty soon, which is really, really exciting. There's already like a bunch of demos that are still kind of floating around, which have bags and bags of potential. So we aim to be recording and putting out new music like a lot more than previously. There won't be years and years waiting for the new stuff. And yeah, I mean, I'm currently in the studio at the moment recording on my first solo project, which is really,
Okay.
really exciting. And yeah, there's just a lot of great things on the horizon. And we're all collectively super excited to just keep going, you know?
See, a lot of things going on. That's what I like to hear. Well, Luke, thank you so much for taking the time for joining us and talking about this record. It's out on November 3rd. And yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks again. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much, mate.